Hey, good afternoon, fellow photographers. I'm just making this video to hopefully prevent anyone from making the same errors. I don't know if they were mistakes, but errors that I made in my photographic journey. And basically, it is something that comes up from time to time, which is called G.A.S. or G.A.S., which stands for Gear Acquisition Syndrome. Being the best and the greatest and the newest that comes out has got to be better than what you have now. Now it may be as far as more features, more megapixels, whatever. Just like when an iPhone comes out, how much better is the iPhone than the one you have in your pocket if it's 1 or 2 years old? Because most people use what? Maybe 10%, if that, of what the iPhone can do, realistically. So basically you have to ask yourself the question, what do I really need in order to fulfill my photographic needs? And again, this is just my own opinion, okay? There's tons of other YouTube videos out there describing, the new equipment that comes out, techniques, etc. But I just want to let you know this is not sponsored by anybody. Presently, I'm shooting this on my iPhone 13, and hopefully you do gain some information that you might find useful out of this. I've gone through a lot of cameras. I'm not going to go back all the way to when I was young, but most recently, let's see, the Panasonic Lumix FZ1000, FZ2500. I went from there to the Canon R6 and all of its other affiliated lenses. And again, for all this equipment, of course, I've got different lenses just because I switched camera companies. I did go to the Nikon series. I think I first went with it, yes, the Nikon D850. Then I went to the D500. Then I went to the Z7. And then just recently I had a Sony A7R3. And some of these had varying reasons to switch. Some, maybe not as good as others. I do have an Epson P700 printer, which I thought that I needed the extra megapixels in order to print 13 by 19. But you really don't. Presently, and I've had this for about a little over a year now, is the Sony RX10 Mark IV. Now, why do I like this camera? One reason is, if you're going to walk around an hour, 2, 3, or 4 hours, you have everything here in your hand. You don't have to have a backpack, different types of lenses, battery grip, tripod, etc. The reason being, the lens on this is a 24-600. That's right, 24 wide angle to 600. Now it's an f4, but realistically, once you get past 100 millimeters, that everything below that is variations of the 2.4 aperture up to the f4. But the f4 basically takes it all the way to the 600. But still, like they say with any camera, it's not the camera itself, it's the lens, okay? And even when I had all those various other, full frame or APS-C cameras, I didn't get the most expensive glass, but I did watch, various other YouTube videos to garner opinions put together to judge what I would buy that wasn't in the super expensive, 1.2 to let's just say 1.8 range of glass, which, you know, is very expensive, $1,000. And of course, if you go up to the, you know, super telephotos, 600, you know, you're talking, you know, if you want the cream of the crop, you're talking almost $12,000 to $16,000. This camera itself, and this is 5 years old now, maybe a little bit older, and it's had one upgrade to the software since then. But if you can imagine, and I'll turn this on for you, as you can see, it, you know, turns out pretty quickly. But this is the 600 millimeter range right here, okay? So you don't need a tripod, you can handhold this. You know, I shoot a lot of action photography, especially kiteboarders with this, and they could be like, oh, let's just say 100 to 200 yards out at least. And you still have a decent aperture in order to stop the action, and usually I shoot from 1/16,000 to maybe 1/2500th of a second, and I'll still be able to capture the shots. And I shoot in RAW, so that way, you know, you can play with that information that RAW gives you versus JPEG, which of course this shoots as well. But this, when the shutter speed is high enough, can do 24 frames per second. I mean, that's a lot. A lot of the cameras that are out there now, even though they're, you know, in and around the same megapixels, which this is 20, don't even go that high. So you have high frame rate with this as well. Some other features on this platform that are very nice is the autofocus, which, other than contrast detection, which a lot of the cameras in what they call the bridge type system have, it has phase detection as well. And if I read correctly, a lot of that technology was taking off the Sony A9. So it's an excellent camera for capturing motion even far away. I've taken several pictures of kiteboarders, again, that are 100 to 200 yards out, birds in flight, iguanas, lizards, wildlife. Excellent camera for all of that. One drawback which some people may look at is the fact that it only has one SD card slot. Little bugger flipped out on me. Now, to me, it's not a big deal. I'm sure, you know, there's stories that, you know, an SD card has gone bad, and, you know, I'm sure that happens. But I've been doing this for a couple years now. Truth be told, never had a problem. I just be sure and reformat it maybe every month or so just to be sure. But works for me. The only drawback is, let's say if you're taking a lot of frames per second, the buffer does lag a little bit, you know, when you're shooting in RAW, which is, you know, just a little over 20 megapixels. But it's something you kind of get used to. The other drawback, from which I've heard people say, is that when you're using the zoom, okay, once you're fixed on a subject, you cannot zoom in and out and use autofocus at the same time. But the nice thing is that the zoom switch is right here. You don't need, which of course you can do it manually, but you know, you can just move this little switch to any area, and then you can just hit, and I use back button focus, so I use the AE button on the back, AEL button, excuse me, and it doesn't take that long to, you know, get that focus locked on again. It works, it's a little problematic, but once you get used to it, again, it's not that big of a deal. So, for everything that's in this package, you know, there's really not that many drawbacks. You know, lots of programmable buttons on the back, and you know, a lot of people decry the Sony system, which is why this was kind of the last system I went into, just because I heard a lot of bad things about their menu system and, you know, finding things. But once you get used to it, just like any others, you get used to it and you know where things are. But you also can program, I think it's like 7 different buttons on this camera for those things that you need right away. And you do have a nice menu system that you can put in some of your more requested features if you can't fit it on any of the buttons on the outside of the camera. Other than that, I guess some of the other drawbacks would be, of course, you have a 1-inch sensor size, and it's not 1 inch, it's just an expression they use. You can find the dimensions going from your full frame, which is 35 millimeter equivalent, on various sites on the internet. Just put in different camera sensors, you can see the sizes that you have in each individual format. The one thing that it does take away from you is the ability for more dynamic range, but also for cropping. So one thing you can do with this is make sure you have your correct picture in your mind, but you do have some things you can play with. Because other than the 24 to 600, 2.4 to 4 zoom, you have what they call clear zoom and digital zoom, which can put you out to 4 times the focal length equivalent of a 35 millimeter format, which is 2400. Now, of course, you're cropping into the 1-inch sensor, which is small, on its own, but you will get a decent image as long as you don't have to crop that image, okay? Because you're looking at anywhere from anywhere past 600 all the way up to 2400 if you want to go that far. It's not something you're going to use all the time. Most of the time I stick right up to the 600. So I get, more information to work with. But it is available in this camera. But like I say, for the price point, let's just put out the pricing of the Canon R6 II, which, just came out. R6 Mark II, excuse me. I think it's right around $2,600, $2,700. You try and put an applicable lens system on that to match this, you're well into the $7,000, $8,000 range for sure. Maybe not that high, but it's going to be close. So just something you can carry around. I just use this wrist strap right here. Okay, keeps it secure. It's not going to drop, and it's right there when you need it. You can hold on to it with 1 or 2 fingers and just have it by your side all the time. It's a lot better than those shoulder straps. They just kind of get in the way. They just kind of cut in every once in a while. This is always in hand, and if you have to grab something out of your pocket, you just let it drop. Pick something out of your pocket, and you're all set to go. That's just how I want, how I like to do it. But to each his own individual taste. I hope this has been informative. Again, it's up to you what you think you need, but it's not what you want. Okay, wants and needs are 2 separate things. I wanted a whole bunch of things when I was going through all these different camera systems. Can I get clearer pictures and with larger megapixels? Of course you can, but you're gonna have to have a steadier hand when you're shooting, especially in long range, with a higher megapixel camera. It's just the way it is. With this, I just find it's a lot easier, it's more handy, and more affordable. Oh, one other thing too. Let's get to the editing side of it. I use my iPhone 13 for my editing. Yeah, for sure. I just use their little plug-in for the SD card. It goes right into their, their photo app. And from there, you can use any type of editing software. I tend to use for the editing software, I tend to use the Photoshop Express, which I think is $35 a year. And it does everything that I need, okay? You can, test it out, look online, see how other people have used it. And then I just, basically load everything from there back into my, photo library. You can put it right up on Instagram if you like. I find it's very effective. And again, it's something I already have in my pocket. I don't need to buy an iPad. I don't need to buy another computer. If you have some of those other more expensive cameras, you're going to be dealing with a CF Express card or something similar where you need to get a reader. It doesn't go into a lightning port per se. So a lot less expense by using this along with what you already have, which most people do have an iPhone or even say an Android. But that's it for now. Best wishes, happy holidays, and hopefully see you next year.